Hi, I'm Jessica Rudnicki with Reynolds and Reynolds. Welcome back to Connected. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dave Bowling, presentation specialist at Reynolds and Reynolds, about adoption of new technologies in an effort to digitize the service department. Let's get connected. Hi, Dave. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for hopping on today.
Thanks for having me.
We are definitely glad to have you. So we're here to talk about fixed operations. We've had several podcasts covering various fixed operations topics in the past, but today I kind of want to talk with you about the big picture, right? So
Mhm.
dealerships have become innovative since the start of this pandemic and how they reach and serve their customers. And service specifically, I want to talk to you today about how they've done that and what kinds of technologies you're seeing dealers use to effectively service vehicles and keep customers as well as the employees happy and safe. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. There's really a lot of ways that dealers are rising to the challenges that COVID's brought on. Some dealerships are utilizing technology to digitize, their processes and meet their customers' needs while protecting their employees. Some things like kiosks for service check-ins, digital communication between employees within the dealership as well as their customer base itself, as well as some new technologies allowing them to remotely sign off on work as well as pay remotely.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned kiosks because that's been a huge hot topic for us, especially on the Connected podcast. We've had a couple of episodes previously where we talk about the kiosks. So thanks for bringing that up. With all of these new technologies, how is business running for dealers? So are they more efficient and more profitable, do you think, or less? What are you kind of seeing and hearing?
Absolutely. They're definitely becoming both more profitable and more efficient. The pandemic's pushed dealers. The technology they're employing as a response to the pandemic, it's really helping to streamline their processes. It makes them safer too.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you touched on kiosks earlier, and that's obviously one of my favorite topics to talk about, and digital communication. So can you dive a little bit deeper into how this kind of technology can help accomplish those goals, both for safety and the efficiency?
Absolutely. When you're talking about kiosk check-in, I mean, obviously you're taking the role of the physical service advisor out of that check-in process. So we're introducing technology to create that barrier between the advisor and that consumer. Um, in addition, the kiosk, not only do they act in that stand-in role as that advisor, but they bring the customer's experience in the dealership more in line with what they're seeing, in everyday life. Walk into a Chick-fil-A, you can go to a kiosk and order your food. When you fly on an airplane, you check in at a kiosk. So it's bringing the service experience more in line with their day to day. In terms of the digital communication piece of that, really it's not only is it keeping them safer, by maintaining that distancing aspect, but it's making them more streamlined and more efficient. By digitizing that process, your technicians aren't walking to the parts counter and standing there to get quotes. They're not walking to the advisor waiting to present work to them. They're not waiting for the advisor to walk back to them. So we're utilizing that technology not only to keep people safe, but also to streamline and make those processes more efficient.
Yeah, well, great information. It definitely sounds like there are a couple of different areas that can be targeted right now to both boost efficiency and profitability for dealers. But if
Mhm.
I'm a dealer, what's the most important process I should be looking at to digitize? So, is there something I should be prioritizing first?
I think there's several that you should be looking at. Specifically, you're grading your check-in. That's when you're going to be spending the most time, in a face-to-face setting with that customer. But also, I think you can utilize some of the technologies that we're talking about here to prioritize and streamline, your vehicle inspection or your report card process. Um, like we mentioned, taking a look at that internal communication. How do we digitize those processes and make them more efficient and less in person, if as it were. Um, All the way down to, the checkout process. How are we accepting payment from our customers? Are we physically handling cash and things like that, or should we be looking more towards remote payment options where they can pay online, come in and remotely pick up their keys and be on their way?
Okay. So I'm assuming the kiosks would be like for the greeting check-in process. And then things like remote payments, just being able to give customers the option to pay on their mobile devices, right? When you
Mhm.
say report card and kind of digitizing that process, what does that look like?
Rather than, having to get a physical piece of paper that gets passed around the dealership, again, we're talking about trying to stay safe in the era of COVID. Um, you know, in a standard scenario, you've got a piece of paper that the advisor's touching, the technician's touching, in some instances, the parts people are touching, and it's getting passed around. If we can look at ways to digitize that process to where I'm not handling a physical piece of paper, and then we can move that digital copy of that report card around utilizing that digitized internal communication, we lessen the contact spread, and then we also enhance our efficiency, because obviously I can send you and you can receive an email faster than I can walk up to you. I say email, it's a little archaic for today's world, but um, just as an example, that's one thing that stands out.
Okay, good example. And obviously, like you said, there are tons of ways that you can keep both employees and customers safe by really digitizing different areas within the service department. So that's great information, and thanks for sharing that with our viewers today. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Before we hop off, is there anything else that you'd like to share today?
I would just like to wish everybody well in the era of COVID, and I would like to issue a challenge to any of our dealer partners out there that are watching this, to take this time and take a step back and take a good in-depth look at your service department to see where these efficiencies could be implemented, and see what you can do to push your process forward and meet your customers' demands.
Okay, so you heard it here from Dave Bowling. You have been challenged. Well, thank you, Dave. Thanks again for those insights on implementing new technologies, and obviously trying to make our dealers more efficient. And thanks again for being here today.
Thank you.
Dave shared some great insights today on the important role technology can play in the safety and efficiency of the service department. Before we hop off, just a quick reminder, you can watch or listen to past and future podcast episodes on YouTube or Apple and Spotify podcasts by searching for the Connected Podcast. Subscribe on these channels to get notified every Wednesday when new episodes are released. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.